So, I just thought I'd like to ask a personality question to start it off with.
Okay.
You have such a good one and you have such a strong one. The people here of North Carolina have been dealing with a lot, obviously, with a hurricane that just came through Florida. And we're going to touch on a lot of topics today about other things that challenge the American people day in and day out, especially over the last few years. So you are no stranger. I just saw your socks.
I'm a dog person.
Awesome. Is that a Malinois?
No, German Shepherd.
Oh, German Shepherd.
We're a big German Shepherd family.
That is awesome. So, speaking of your personality, you're no stranger to having challenges in your life and having to dig deep and having to come through and just to get where you are today. I would love for you to share with us what it is about your mindset and the tools that you use to be able to achieve the great things that you have.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for doing this. It's awesome to be here. Thank you to North Carolina. 26 days, we're going to turn the state red. We're going to do it together. God bless you guys. And I guess it's a tough question to ask, or a tough question to answer, because it's always hard to evaluate yourself honestly. And I think that maybe the two things, yes, I did have a tough life in some ways, and my mom struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I was raised by my grandmother. We didn't always have very much money. We love Mamaw. I know we got a lot of Mamaw lovers out here. I see the book. But I think that the main thing that allowed me to be able to live my dreams is, one, we live in the greatest country in the world. Obviously, that's important. I don't think my story could have happened anywhere but the United States of America. But I think what I always had this sense of gratitude, because my grandmother, she couldn't walk very well towards the end of her life. I mean, she died when she was 72 years old, which then I thought was really old, but now I think it's kind of young, actually.
It is.
And I realized, there were so many little ways where without her love and without her support and without her going above and beyond, I just wouldn't have been here. And that recognition, you can let yourself become a victim when times are tough. You can sort of become a little resentful, or you can recognize that, there but by the grace of God go I. And because of Mamaw, I was able to, marry this beautiful woman who's here. Usha's, my lovely wife, is with me. And, everything that I really wanted, I just wanted to become a good husband and become a good dad. And that was the American dream to me. And that was possible because my grandmother, and, those of you who've read the book will know, she was a very, very interesting and in some ways even a contradictory person, right? Because she was a woman of incredibly profound Christian faith. She never graduated from high school, but she was the smartest person that I ever knew. She also really loved the F word, right? So, there was sort of all these things going on with Mamaw at the same time. But I just think that, that the advice that I would give to anybody, and I actually met a young man today who was raised by his grandmother and told me a little bit about his story, and I'm always grateful when people tell me about where they came from, is don't let yourself become a victim, and don't forget that however hard your life has been, it would be a lot harder but for people that you ought to show some gratitude towards. And if you keep that spirit of gratitude, I think you'll do just fine.
Well, thank you for sharing that. This is a town hall, so let's get to some questions.
Let's do it.
The first question is from Adam.
You guys stand up. How are you, Senator Vance?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Pretty good, a little tired. Over the last 14 days, we, myself, my fiance, and these awesome pilots behind us have been delivering supplies all over Western North Carolina.
God bless you guys. God bless you all. We love you. We're proud of you, and we're so grateful to you. Here.
We've seen a bit of everything. we've seen absolute decimation, we've seen destruction, and we have seen miracles left and right. Over the last 14 days, we've probably had close to, just at our location, maybe 500 different volunteers come through. And we have seen American of every shape, color, creed, and size helping every other American, which is what America is supposed to be. There's two big fears that we have. The biggest fear right now is that when all this is over, Western North Carolina becomes a footnote. And we don't want that. We don't want that for anybody that's left behind after a disaster, holding the bag, trying to rebuild everything that they've lost. And the second fear is that we won't have an opportunity to have a real conversation about the after action of what took place in order for us to understand how we can use a combination of both private sector and public sector funding and efforts to have effective, efficient actions on the ground, to make it more mobile and more agile, but more importantly, to re-inject capital back into the local economy. So this is my question. The first thing I'd like to ask is this. Will you and President Trump promise to not forget Western North Carolina if you win the election?
We will never forget Western North Carolina. That's right.
And I don't doubt that you won't. I do not doubt. The second question I think is more important. The second question is, when can we sit down and have a real legitimate conversation about overhauling the process of disaster relief in the United States?
Amen.
And understanding,
Amen. Yeah.
if I may, understanding that the bureaucratic process of red tape that we have to cut through in order to get the funding directly to the people who need it most is just simply takes too long. And it's not the fault of any individual agency or the federal government. There's a lot of...
Hold on just a second, man. We okay? Kamala Harris built this platform behind us. That's what happened. We doing okay, ma'am? We good?
You can have my chair if you want.
Go ahead, sir.
The question is, can we have a conversation about revamping a national disaster strategy so that we can utilize retired veterans and special operations personnel who have been leading the charge hands down in Western North Carolina and effectively provided food, supplies, and medical aid and assistance to thousands and thousands of lives, and revamping the national disaster strategy in the United States so that we can make it more effective?
Yeah, man, that's a big question, an important question. Let me just say, I want to reiterate, Donald Trump and I know that the Appalachian region of our country, Western North Carolina, East Tennessee, East Kentucky, West Virginia, Southwestern Virginia, has been left behind and forgotten, and we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it in response to this disaster, and we're never going to let the people of that region of our country, the region really built our country, we're never going to let them be left behind or forgotten. I promise that to you, man. And let me just say about the disaster response. First of all, I want to thank you all for everything that you did. And I want to thank all the private relief agencies, the charities, the Good Samaritans who did their job and took care of their fellow Americans. God bless you guys. We should all be proud of them. And it would have been a lot worse without them. And look, I think now that hopefully we're moving to the stage where we're trying to rebuild as opposed to just recover. And I know we're still recovering a little bit, and that's an unfortunate tragedy here. But I think once we get past that, hopefully in the next few days, where we've gotten everybody, saved everybody that we can save, then it's time to focus on the disastrous federal response to this incredible crisis. And I think what I've learned is look, 2 days, okay. You have the hurricane. Western North Carolina is underwater. What should have happened is that the president and the vice president should have sent the 82nd Airborne to Western North Carolina that day, and it should have happened right away. And instead, of course, we had a president at the beach and a vice president at a fundraiser in San Francisco. What you need in times like this is you just need leadership. Because I think, sir, you put it so well. It's not any one agency. And there are a lot of people working on the federal effort who are doing a good job, or at least is doing as good as they can. The problem is all the bureaucratic incompetence. And I was actually talking with Elon Musk about this a few days ago. I mean, Elon, by the way, was like a center-left Democrat 4 years ago. Now he's got a dark MAGA hat, right? On that you just talk about a guy who's pissed off about government incompetence. He's Elon Musk. But I think what happened is, look, you've got the FAA, you've got FEMA, you've got all these relief agencies, and you've got people who have been trained by the government bureaucracy that their job is not to cut the BS and help people, it's to basically act like the DMV, right? And unfortunately, what that means in this case is you've got a lot of people who could have been helped, a lot of lives that could have been saved that weren't. And there's a lot of details to figure out. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot about how corrupt and incompetent our government is. But I think the most important thing here is we try to get to the bottom of how we had such a massive failure. And I'm sorry, think about this. In 2010, the terrible earthquake in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, the 82nd Airborne was there 2 days later. 2 days later. The 82nd Airborne is an hour away from Western North Carolina, and it took 6 days to get them there. That doesn't happen without a failure of leadership. We got to get to the bottom of exactly what that failure of leadership looked like. And the final thing I'll say, sir, is the only way to fix this is by accountability. It's true in the private sector. It's true in the public sector. If you don't have accountability, in other words, if you don't fire the people who screwed up, it's never going to get better. And what is fundamentally what's fundamentally different about the leadership style of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is Donald Trump, I mean, hell, he got famous saying, "You're fired." He believes in accountability in our government. Kamala Harris just doesn't. I think it's this attitude of go along to get along, of, yeah, you screwed up and maybe even you got people killed, but we're not going to fire you. That's not going to do good for our people in the 21st century. And I want to say just one final thing. I see you, and it sounds like you guys are pilots. You guys were helping get relief resources.
These guys are all pilots. The guys that are here, immediate crew that are in
I just want to say, man, I want to be the kind of vice president where you feel like I have your back and that I haven't left you behind. And I know that Donald Trump wants to be the kind of president that will always have your back and never leave you behind. We are so proud of you. We're so grateful for you, and we're going to fight for you when we're in the White House. God bless you guys. Thank you. Thanks for the question, man. Seriously.
That's what it is to be an American. That's what it is to be an American. Our next
Exactly
question
right.
comes from Jean.
First, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And thank you for being that public official who knows how to answer a question.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you.
I am from North Carolina, and my question regards illegal immigration. Last week, we learned that 13,000 murderers came across our border illegally. What is the plan to deport these awful criminals?
Yes, ma'am. The plan, to put it simply, is we got to send them home. We got to send them home ASAP, and that's exactly what we're going to do. They have no right to be in this country. And, you know, it's funny because the media, which for 3.5 years has refused to even cover the terrible problems of Kamala Harris's open border, will now say things like, well, how are you going to deport people? You know, it's just way too hard to deport people. It's actually not hard to deport people. You just got to have competent administration that's willing to send people back to where they belong and not let them collect benefits in our country. And ma'am, I really think that unless we get this right in the next administration, We are throwing open the floodgates to illegal immigration for the next 30 years in this country. Think of the message that you're sending. Because yes, it's 13,000 murderers, and it's tens of thousands of violent criminals in addition to the 13,000 murderers, but it's also millions upon millions of people who have come here, and some of them are good people, but that doesn't mean they have the legal right to be in the United States of America. We've got to separate those two things. And if the message that our country sends after 25 million illegal aliens coming into this country is, you get to stay here, you get to collect housing benefits, you get to collect welfare benefits, while folks in Western North Carolina are struggling to survive, we will never have a border in this country again. It's why we've got to elect Donald Trump. Send a message to these people. No more illegal immigration. No more open borders. Thank you, ma'am.
On the topic of illegal immigration, it's estimated that it costs this country $150 billion a year. So I'd like to hear where is that affecting the American people? And when that's solved, what can they expect to improve?
Yeah, Danny, it's affecting people in so many different ways. And I actually think that $150 billion may even be undercounting it. Because a lot of what that money is illegal aliens who collect welfare benefits in some form or another. So that's Section 8 housing. And take just one example. Let's say and I've seen this in communities that I represent in the state of Ohio, where you'll have multiple families living in the same house. Each of them gets Section 8. So they're able to pay way more than an American citizen who's just working at their job 40, 45, 50 hours a week. And so Americans are getting evicted from their homes to make way for illegal aliens who are only there because of the generosity of American taxpayers. That is one of the biggest ways it affects us, is it drives up the cost of housing, and it leads to a lot of people being unable to afford their homes. Here's another big way it matters. I don't know what the exact number in North Carolina is, but I learned in Michigan, 85,000 children of illegal aliens are in the Michigan public schools. And Michigan and North Carolina, probably about the same number, actually, here in the state of North Carolina. Well, what do you think that does to the poor public high school teacher who's just trying to give kids a good education, but all of a sudden they're dealing with classrooms that are full of people, they don't even speak the language. And again, it's nothing against those kids, it's saying something against Kamala Harris, who let those kids come in and deprive Americans of a good education. Here's another big way that it matters, and this is something I know very personally. My mom struggled with addiction for a very long time. And my mom got clean and sober about 10 years ago. She'll actually celebrate 10 years clean and sober in January. And I thank you all for that. And I just know, please, that there is hope on the other side of addiction. There really is hope and recovery for all of those who are struggling with it or have families that do. But there's only hope if we give people a second chance. One thing I really worry about is when you talk about 100,000 Americans dying of fentanyl, and the fentanyl, of course, is brought in by these Mexican drug cartels, that's 100,000 kids that never get a second chance with their mom. That's 100,000 moms and dads that never get a second chance to become clean. This is destroying our country. And I happen to believe we've got the best people in the world. We've got the best country in the world. But we cannot allow Kamala Harris's broken leadership to continue to screw this up, or that's going to change. We've got great people. Let's fix the broken leadership and get Kamala Harris out of there.
Just my children.
We all look forward to that. Our next question.
26 days.
26 days.
That's right.
26 days. The countdown is on.
It's going to happen.
Get voting. Vote early.
That's right.
Our next question comes from Kaylee.
Hello. Thank you, Senator Vance, for being here.
Of course.
And thank you for taking questions, because you're doing a great job.
I've taken more questions in the past 15 minutes than Kamala Harris has the whole campaign. But you guys...
I'm a small business owner and a first-time voter, and I'm a hairdresser.
God bless you.
I was wondering how you were going to help. Oh, I lost my place. Oh, one day I want to start a family and own my own home, but with raising costs, I do not know if that will be able to happen. You have come from humble beginnings. So what is your plan for creating more opportunities for people like me?
Yes, ma'am. Of course. Well, thank you for your question, and it's an important one. And I will say, I think we've got a question here, a question over here, and a question over here. I think I need a swivel chair the next time that we do an event like this.
They need to make us a lazy Susan.
That's right.
Spin around.
Right. Well, I think to answer your question, let's start by understanding because it's really important to understand the root causes of some of these problems. Why are things so expensive under Kamala Harris's leadership? And there are a whole host of things I could point to, but actually the most important is energy, okay? So think about it like this. Groceries are 25% higher than they were 3.5 years ago. That's because the truck drivers are paying way more for diesel fuel, and it's the truck drivers who are getting the groceries to the grocery store. Our farmers are paying more for diesel, and of course they're the ones growing the food. And then finally, you think about building a house. Well, if all the people who are doing the building and delivering the materials are paying more for gas and more for energy, then that's going to raise the price of everything. So President Trump has this phrase, which I think is very simple, but it's also a genuinely specific policy. The most important thing we got to do to lower prices and make life more affordable is drill, baby, drill. We've got to unleash American energy. It really is so important. And it also, by the way, I admire you so much for doing what you do and having the courage to go out and do it on your own. It's not easy, but you ought to have a government that makes your life a little bit easier and makes it a little bit easier for you to get ahead instead of harder and harder to get ahead. I mean, think about this. You're a small businesswoman. You're building something that is creating prosperity, not just for you, but for your community. Of course, you provide a good service. I need a haircut right now, by the way, so I'll call you. But think about this. We have got two really different economic proposals from Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. You know, Kamala Harris's entire economic plan boils down to we're going to raise taxes on American workers and we're going to reward companies that ship jobs overseas. Donald Trump's vision is like the exact opposite. We're going to cut taxes for American workers. We're going to penalize folks who are shipping American jobs overseas. We want to reward people like you who are creating prosperity right here in the United States of America. But the one last thing I'd say, and I'd ask you to, I'm sure you've got, a lot of friends. You're clearly, like you said, you're a first-time voter, and I know that there are a lot of first-time voters who are still figuring this stuff out. What I really worry about, and I'm older than you, but I'm pretty young by the standards of national politics. I'm only 40. And one of the things I really worry about is the young generation in this country. They're growing up in a nation where they're going to become paupers in the country that their parents and their grandparents built. The American dream of homeownership, not being deep in credit card debt. I want you to own a piece of the future and not just be a permanent debtor to people and institutions that don't care about you and don't like you. I want you to own a slice of this country, and that's how we're going to create prosperity. Thank you.
The globalist view of own nothing and be happy is not what the American people
That's right.
want.
They want you to live in a pod, eat bugs, and own nothing, right? That is like fundamentally, that's where their vision ultimately lands. I want you to own a nice house, be able to start a family, and build a great business in the United States of America. And that's what Donald Trump is fighting for every single day.
I tried cricket one time. I just couldn't wrap my head around eating crickets. I know they're high in protein, but
I'm ashamed to admit it. I have also tried cricket. It is honestly more disgusting than you could possibly imagine. So don't eat the bugs. We want to eat red meat. We want to eat whatever we want to eat.
Yes.
But no cricket.
I've somehow become a steak and potatoes girl, just like my dad always was. And
Yeah,
he was like,
that's
Dad,
good.
where's the veggies? I'm like, where's the steak and potatoes?
That's right.
Kaylee, I'm also a first-time voter, I just want to say. I've never voted before,
Oh, that's
but
awesome.
this time
Good for
around,
you.
I have to vote. Yeah. It's that important.
I just want to be clear. I want to get on record. You're voting for us, right? You're voting for the good guys?
1,000%.
There we go.
If I could vote twice, I would.
We don't do that. We're Republicans. We vote legally. Only one time.
The way you vote twice is to bring a friend.
That's right.
Bring a friend.
That's a good point. Vote twice the legal way. Bring yourself and a friend to the polls. That's very good.
Speaking of energy, we became energy independent for the first time under Donald Trump's administration.
Right.
With AI requiring so much power to run it, and with wanting to become energy independent again, how long do you think it's going to take to be there again? And what is the pathway to that?
That's a very good question, because to your point, AI requires so much power that unless we have effectively unlimited power, we're not going to be able to power the AI revolution. I mean, this is like crazy, space age stuff. Like, instead of going to a doctor to get your skin checked out to see if you have skin cancer, for example, you can take a photo and it'll tell you whether you have cancer. Like, that's what the AI revolution is going to mean. That's going to mean more people living. That's going to mean cheaper medical costs, but only to your point, if we get those energy costs reasonable. You ask, how long is it going to take to get energy independent? If Donald Trump is the president, it'll happen almost immediately, because we've got so much energy here, we can do it. I mean, 2 years to get us back to where we were. Because, I mean, look, in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, I mean, in Florida, we've got energy resources that the world would literally kill for. And in some cases, some of these countries have actually started wars over the resources we have. Kamala's entire policy is to buy oil and gas from tin-pot dictators all over the world. Let's buy it from American citizens right here at home and create a lot of good American jobs in the process. But look, if Kamala Harris wins, God forbid, I'm going to have nightmares now just for saying that. But I think it would take us 10 years after her administration, assuming she only got 4 years, it would take us 10 years to get us out of the hole that she would dig us into. That's how bad these guys are on energy. They've got it in their mind that they care about the environment, but they don't actually care about the environment. We believe in clean air and clean water in the Republican Party. We actually created a lot of the environmental protections that exist. You were on stage with Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy cares about the environment. Trust me, he does. But if you want clean air, you don't ship all of our manufacturing and energy to China, which is the dirtiest economy per unit of economic output in the world. You build more and make more in the United States of America. That's what President Trump will do.
Our next question comes from Patricia.
Good evening.
Now I really need that swivel chair, Patricia.
I've got your back.
Thank you. That's right.
I'm Pat, and I'm from Timberlake, North Carolina. And I'm a retired healthcare worker. And my question tonight is that it's about Social Security.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've seen ads and posts where Donald Trump is going to take away our Social Security or cut it or decrease it. But then I also see ads and posts that Donald Trump is planning to remove taxes on Social Security. Can you explain and describe and clarify yours and Donald Trump's Social Security plan?
Yes, ma'am. Well, first of all, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, but I'm going to stand up here because ma'am, I think you know this. I think a lot of us know this. Don't believe everything you see on TV, because a lot of those things are paid for by Democrat money. It's dishonest. Here's what Donald Trump's going to do. He's going to protect Social Security, and he is going to cut taxes on Social Security income, because our seniors, you paid into it for your whole lives. You ought to be able to enjoy the benefit of it on the other end. It's that simple. But here's something that really matters here, because you know what will bankrupt Social Security in this country? Giving it to illegal aliens. And that is exactly, this is what I think is so sick about what Kamala Harris is going out there doing. She is accusing us of doing the very same thing that she herself is promising to do. She wants to bankrupt this program, not by giving it to the people who paid into it, by giving it to people who don't even have the legal right to be in this country to begin with. And if you want our seniors to enjoy their Social Security, Donald J. Trump is the only candidate in this race that's going to protect it. Ma'am.
So I think it's safe to say that if you were in the administration for the last few years, you'd do some things different.
I think so. I think so.
I like that when Kamala speaks, we gain 100,000 votes. Is that the number?
You know, though some of our interviews are so bad, maybe it's a couple 100,000 votes. But, you know, there's an interview that she gave a couple of days ago with The View.
Not exactly a hard-hitting one.
No. That's like, you know, the ultimate softball interview, but I guess it's tough if you can't even hit a T-ball, which I think is Kamala Harris in some of these interviews. But, you know, she was asked, and we have to back up for a second. Remember, the whole argument of her campaign is that she is different from Joe Biden. You would actually, in fact, you know, be forgiven for believing that she's not his sitting vice president, even though, of course, she is, because she's running so far away from it. And she cast the deciding vote on a lot of the worst policy. She has bragged about being the last person in the room when these decisions were made. So The View asked Kamala Harris, a total softball, would you have done anything differently from Joe Biden over the last 4 years? And Kamala Harris says, nothing comes to mind. It blew up the whole lie at the heart of her campaign in one interview answer. And I will say, though, when she says nothing comes to mind, that's probably true about whatever topic the answer is about. So I'm hardly the most obvious person to defend Kamala Harris, but maybe she was just being honest about her state of mind.
Shows she's a placeholder.
Exactly.
Didn't have any thoughts. We know that it would be different with you guys, and we know that you answer questions, and we love that. We love having someone in charge of our country that answers questions and that's going to get things done.
I appreciate that. Well, So I think this answering questions thing is actually kind of important because, look, I'm 40 years old. It's other than marrying this beautiful lady up here and raising our kids together, the greatest honor of my life is being your vice presidential nominee for the Republican Party. It's an incredible thing. It's an incredible honor to be able to do this. But think about this. I'm asking you all to make me your next vice president. That is an awesome thing, an incredible responsibility I'm asking for. You ought to go out and earn it and speak to the American people. Kamala Harris runs from the American people, and I think that shows a real defect of the kind of leadership skills you need to be the President of the United States in the first place. And I will tell you this story. So I guess this was a couple weeks ago. It was a Sunday, and I was sitting at home with our 7-year-old in Cincinnati, and I get a call, and it's the president. And I said, hey, sir, what's going on? How you doing? And he said, well, they tried to do it again. And I said, well, they tried to do what again? And it was the Sunday where a second assassination attempt happened on President Trump's life. He had just gotten from the golf course. And I, like any friend, I immediately go to, how are you doing? Are you okay? Like, obviously, you're physically okay because you're calling me, but mentally, that's a pretty traumatic thing to almost get shot a second time in as many months. And he goes, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, but the one thing is I'm kind of pissed off because I was going to make a birdie on the 6th hole, and the Secret Service wouldn't let me finish.
It's a big deal. Birdies are hard.
I mean, look, I'm not a very good golfer, so I feel the same way. He's a hell of a lot better of a golfer than I am, and I really care about those birdies. But then something kind of hit me that isn't the kind of person you want in emergency crisis situations in the Oval Office. You want the guy who isn't fazed by an assassination attempt. You don't want the woman who runs from a friendly American media. Like, there's something... There's something about the way that Kamala Harris has run this campaign that I think is genuinely, to all Americans, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, is insulting. Because think about it, she's asking you to give her control over millions of American troops. Potentially, I mean, over the entire nuclear arsenal of the United States. She is asking for literally the authority to command life and death all over the world. And she won't even go out and talk to the American people in a non-friendly setting. We all should be insulted by that. I think it's a disgraceful way to run a campaign, and I hope we don't reward her, and I don't think that we will.
And just to wrap it up, since I know you'll answer any question.
Oh, no.
I think you could share maybe what you did with your day off that you had a couple days ago and what your special secret skill is with the American people.
All right, well.
And be specific.
Okay, I will. Okay. Well, I was raised in a middle-class family, and it's that's the Kamala Harris answer to any question. So
you forgot to
you
laugh.
Guys, yeah,
you forgot to
that's
laugh.
Right. Yeah, I forgot the awkward cackle afterwards. But okay. So I had half a day off on the campaign trail the other day, and because we're kind of in crunch time, so you don't really get much time off. But you'd probably be shocked to know this, that I'm a big baker. Like I really, I can, yeah. There's some bakers out there. So my 4-year-old and I, he's like my sous chef when we're baking. So we made, because I was gonna, because my wife and I were on the road for a couple days. The kids are at home right now with my aunt and uncle, and then we get back late tonight. So I made them breakfast treats for 3 days in a row. And so for the first day, they had homemade cinnamon rolls. The second day, they had dulce de leche rolls. And the third day, they had chocolate chip scones. So we did all that together. And, I'm not perfect, but I do have the talent of baking. So that's one thing I got going for me.
Fantastic. Well, we also spoke about the fact that you don't get to drive anymore. So if you got to drive yourself away from here tonight, what kind of car would you want to drive?
Oh, that is a tough question.
Any car.
Well, this just shows the phase of life I'm in. I would happily take my minivan right now and drive it because I don't have any ability to drive anything else. God bless you guys. Thank you so much.